Our job is to consecrate ourselves to God. And if we do that day in and day out, God is going to show up and show off. Flip the script. If you want to change your life, you have to change your story. Kiss the wave. The obstacle is not the enemy. The obstacle is the way. Eat the frog. If you want God to do the super, you have to do the natural. Fly the kite. How you do anything is how you'll do everything. Cut the rope. Playing it safe is risky. Wind the clock. You do not find time, you have to make time. Seed the clouds. You have to sow today what you want to see tomorrow.
There are some incredible habits in there, habits that we want to explore as we kick off 2022 and we consider what it might look like to win the year. And if you missed last week, we just wanted to zero in on one thing. You don't win the year. You don't do 365 days. You win the day. You take the 24 hours set in front of you, 24 hours that brought you into today, and you explore what it might look like to apply and to practice a way of thinking and a way of living that my hope is would bring you closer to what God has for you, would bring you nearer to his purpose and his design for you. And today's conversation is around this idea of flip the script. Now, we just sang these words. I will sing, preach to my fears. I will sing, preach to my doubts. And I love that because I want to pick a fight today. It's not because Jason Friend and Dee Smith are both gone that I want to pick a fight. They're both very large. I want to pick a fight, size isn't everything, okay? I want to pick a fight with your brain and my brain today. I'll tell you why as we talk about flip the script. If you want to change your life, start by changing your story. And this series we're in is really based off of a book by Mark Batterson, a pastor from Washington, D.C., called Win the Day. Win the Day. And we're taking some of the habits and principles and putting them into a sermon series. But here's the issue. Here's why I want to pick a fight with your brain. So some University of Michigan researchers think they understand what your food does to you. All right, they think they've cracked the code, that if you eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you add 33 minutes of life. 33 minutes. But if you drink a soft drink, you lose 12 minutes of life. So they broke down, they looked at thousands of foods, and they said, we can, based on the makeup and the composition of food and what we know about the diet, what we know and don't know about the digestive system, we think that we can create a reasonable scale to help you live longer. Now, if you look in here, you'll notice again, if we go back to peanut butter and jelly sandwich, whole grain bread, not like Wonder Bread, okay? Peanut butter and jelly sandwich, 33 minutes to your life. Double cheeseburger, you lose 8 minutes. Some of you are doing the math. You're like, wait, it says zero sum. I can go out, eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, then go pound 3 bacon cheeseburgers, and I break even. Nothing gained, nothing lost. But there's a real villain in this chart. The villain is this guy right here. Hot dogs. One little hot dog, innocent hot dog, high school football game, concession stand, hot dog will take away, one of those things will take away 36 minutes of your life. Eat 2 of those, you're down an hour. All right? Hot dogs. Now, here's what's fascinating. I really don't know much about food. It's kind of been an ongoing battle for me anyways. I'm pretty sure I don't always win on this chart. But I know you and I live under a tremendous amount of stress. That stress is driven by what happens in here. That's why I want to pick a fight with our brains today as we talk about how to flip the script, how to tell ourselves a new story. It's not a conversation about things out there. It's a conversation about what's going to happen in here. It's estimated that the average person's life of stress may reduce the quality of their life and the goodness they live into by up to 3 years. That's 3 years. I'm going to do some basic math for you. 3 years of stress is like eating 40,880 hot dogs. So if I said to you, hey, keep living the way you're living, it's working out perfectly for you, right? Just keep pounding those hot dogs. Don't worry about it. You go, no way, man, I can only eat so many hot dogs. But for whatever reason, we think we can just take on so much stress. However much stress we want to, just pile it on and on and on. And here's the thing. See, Jesus speaks about life like this. He says he's talking to people about how to live and how to find wisdom and how to make the most of your day and what to do with it. And he says, look, but seek to aim at and strive after. First of all, his kingdom and his righteousness. So Jesus says there's a better way. There's a better way, and you want to aim after it. You want to strive after it. His way of doing and being right is his righteousness, and then all these things taken together will be given to you. You know what all these things are. It's the stuff of life. Jesus has just spent time talking about worrying about the clothes you wear, where your shelter comes from, and what are you going to eat, and are your retirement accounts going to increase at the right percentage, and what's going to happen with your home equity, and are you going to get into the college you want to get into, and are you going to make the team, and on and on and on, and is she going to say yes if you ask her to prom, and like all these things. He goes, look, but seek, aim at, and strive after, first of all, his kingdom. And his righteousness, that's his way of doing and being right. And everything else will be added to you. But it's not that simple, because here's kind of my conviction. It's not mine alone, but your brain can be a real jerk. All right, you are sitting right now with an absolute jerk. Right here, residing in your head. I want to make my case, though. You're not a jerk. Your brain's a jerk. You're awesome, okay? But your brain's kind of the problem. So your brain can do this. Your brain's really good at logic, solving problems, math, puzzles. You can win game shows and things like with your brain. Your brain's amazing. Your brain can reason, can write stories, and can get degrees and can solve, problems no one ever thought could be solved. Your brain can write a song, All I Want for Christmas Is You, that Mariah Carey can sing year over year and make $60 million off of. That's how incredible our brains are. Some of you are like, that's not, but here's the problem. Your brain's a jerk. Because in the midst of all those things, it does two things. Your brain lies about memories and confuses fake trauma with real trauma. Two things your brain does regularly. It convinces you that what you remember is true. The stories you tell yourself, the script you follow, the script you were handed as a kid by your parents, by your church, by your friends, by yourself, by your professors, by your coaches, the script that was built for you, it convinces you that those memories, that everything happened exactly how you think it happened, and it has to shape you and form you. But this one's even trickier. It confuses fake trauma with real trauma. There is a neurological experience called trauma that blazes paths in your brain and affects how you view the world and how you live out in the world. There's also fake trauma that's nothing like real trauma, and your brain often confuses the two and treats them like the same. And this is complicated because there's no there's no experience that's the opposite of trauma. So some of you in this room, when I say trauma, you immediately go to an experience, maybe even therapy and a life you've walked, and you go, I get trauma. You know that. How unfair is that? There's no opposite. There's no one single event you can experience that will counteract and take away your experience of trauma. And in the midst of that, your brain plays with trauma. So that's the first thing it does. Here's what I mean by lies about memories. Let's talk about a few old memories. So students are in the room. You probably won't remember these things happening, but I want to go to more recent and then further back, 9/11. 9/11 happened over 2 decades ago. I know exactly where I was when 9/11 happened. I was at my house. My wife was interviewing for a job. It was my day off, and her sister called and said, have you seen the news? We didn't have a TV. Well, we had a little 10-inch black and white TV. I'm not as old as I sound when I say that, but we had a little 10-inch black and white TV. I pulled out, I plugged in on the counter, took the antenna out, tuned it in, and I watched something horrific unfold before me. And I remember I was crying, the emotion. Like, think about, where were you when 9/11 happened? Researchers studied stories of 9/11. They asked people, where were you when it happened? And they went back and they asked again and they asked again. And they found that over time, 60% of the answers changed. The brain just remembers the wrong stuff. We can't put all our trust in this thing. I'll tell you where we're going to go with that, because let's go one step further. Space Shuttle Challenger, a little further back. My whole life, I have said, I was in 6th grade. In the library, watching this benchmark moment in education and space exploration. This was when one of our space shuttles exploded right on national TV, for those of you who it hasn't really been part of what seared into your brain. And I watched, I was in the library. But yesterday, my wife did the math. She's like, you weren't in 6th grade. You were in 5th grade. But I have put a stake in the ground my whole adult life. 6th grade, I remember. Junior high, I was there. It happened. No one can prove me wrong. This is what they found with the brain. They took psychology students and they asked them, where were you when you watched the Challenger explode? Then, 3 years later, they went back and they said, where were you when you watched that disaster unfold before you? 40% of those students answered differently. So they took out a piece of paper where they had them write their answers on. And they said, but how do you explain this? I want to read a direct quote, which one person said. I agree it's handwritten. I agree it's my writing. I agree, I wrote it. I don't know why I lied, because I clearly remember where I was. The brain's a jerk. All right, so if you can just agree a little bit with that for me today, and I'm about the furthest thing from a neuroscientist you'll ever meet, okay? But I think we can all agree this is not entirely trustworthy. So now we jump in and we go, so what's the other thing the brain does? The other challenge is the brain has this problem with believing what it already believes. It's called confirmation bias. Like, we have some experiences, some ideas, we tell ourselves a story, and then life just fits into that story. You're never going to find the job that satisfies you. The minute your brain grabs hold of that, it will confirm that belief with the rest of your experiences. I'm always going to be alone. Our marriage is never going to find a way forward. This relationship with my kids or my parents is always going to be broken. These type of things find themselves in, and then we just end up looking for evidence to support what's not true, but what we believed to be true. Think of it like soundtracks. When I say soundtrack right now, is there just don't say it out loud, but what song comes to mind for you? Probably something from some moment in your life. It's probably most likely a junior high dance. It's Bryan Adams, Everything I Do. I do for you. If you don't know what that song is, you young people, get on the train because you are missing out, all right? That song has all the feels, all the emotions. Every junior high dance, you're like, this is my destiny's happening right now while this song is playing. And if I miss the moment, that's a soundtrack. Soundtracks help, they shape movies, they shape our stories, they shape our lives. With the brain, it does something really interesting. It plays broken soundtracks that don't fit the story, and we believe they're the right tune over and over. So I kind of made up a way to think about it. So the brain creates soundtracks that are broken. And here's an example of some of them. Entitlement. We're going to use a promotion. It's kind of an all play. Everyone someday wants a promotion, right? Entitlement. I can't believe he got that promotion instead of me. So that's a soundtrack. You can lay that over any experience in your life, but it's a broken soundtrack. Regret. I should have never gone down this path. I knew this was a dead end. Regret. It's a broken soundtrack. Fear. I better keep my head down and not take any risks, because if they really knew, then I would be gone. Blame. The world's unfair. It's unfair. Why don't I get what other people get? Fairness is a fascinating thing we grab hold of. And fairness is like trying to make sense of fairness is probably an unfair thing to do to yourself. Resignation. This is how it will always be. It's never going to be any. Broken soundtracks. The brain's a liar. Now, it's the first few weeks of January, and sometimes I think I finished something up here and I haven't. So if you're joining us for the first time, we do a question every morning. There's usually a question here. Today we just have question 1. Okay? But I know what question 1 is, so I'm going to ask it to you, and it's about your soundtracks in your brain. The question is this: what broken soundtrack is part of your script? We're talking today about rewriting, flipping the script, telling yourself a new story. What broken soundtrack, no matter how much you're thriving in life, what broken soundtrack would you go, yeah, that's part of my script? That is something I believe that I know isn't true, but I just can't escape it. It's always with me. So maybe you don't have one, but I want to invite you to consider deeply, because the more you can become aware of where your brain has been playing tricks on you, I think the more opportunity there is for all of us to take a step towards freedom. So take just about a minute. It's not even fair to answer question 1. Take a minute. What broken soundtrack is part of your script heading into 2022? And then we'll come back, we'll pick on the brain a little more, and we're going to explore the story of this guy named Jacob. things are real. I mean, part of my job includes spending time with people, talking through their lives and what they hope for and what stands in the way between them and God, or where they feel like they're thriving or where they feel like they're struggling. People always, you, me, we always lead with this like wrong story that's just not true, but we're convinced it is. I mean, I think about broken soundtracks I was given, okay? I love my dad. I don't know, I don't see my dad that often. He lives across the country. But a teacher told me once? A teacher said to me, "You're going to end up just like your dad." That was a statement from an educator to a kid. So do you know what I decided to do? I decided I'm not going to end up like my dad. What does that do in someone's story when that becomes your driving force? I'm not going to be like them. That's not health. Right? That's just me running away from a broken soundtrack. Here's one of the adult ones I wrestle with. So I sometimes wonder, I'm like, I don't know if there's enough of me. Like to be a husband, to be a dad, to be a pastor, to be a friend, to be a good neighbor. I don't know if there's enough of me. And what if you all figure it out? What if you find out I'm running on empty? And what if I run out? And then you're like, he wasn't who we thought he was. That's an interesting soundtrack to wrestle with, isn't it? So here's the thing. The reason this conversation is so important, and the reason talking about the brain is a necessary biblical conversation, is because our faith is lived out through this space. God has put this together for us to encounter him and build relationship with one another and to either win or lose based on kind of what's happening in this space. Because thought empowers action, which generates results. If you believe that finding time to connect with God daily will transform your relationship with Jesus, if that thought enters your head enough, you'll begin to act on it. And I can promise you, the more space you create to connect with God daily, you will find that you begin to encounter your spirituality in a different way. You encounter Jesus in a different way. If you believe that you will always be alone, and you tell yourself that regularly, that will produce action that will generate results. If you think that your marriage is stuck, it's not going up or down, it's just what it is the rest of your life, that's going to create action, which will generate results. This isn't that complicated. You and I live this out all the time. Every day we live into this, we step into it. It's quite common, and it drives a lot of what, the motivation we see with influencers, the self-help world. This guy, a lot of you know Dave Goggins. Dave Goggins, former Navy SEAL, lost a ton of weight, became an ultra marathoner. He's super intense. He just takes every day and wins it, right? Well, Dave Goggins is so intimidating because he's just living. Look how Dave Goggins talks. The most important conversation you'll ever have are the ones with yourself. You wake up with them, you walk around with them, you go to bed with them, and eventually you learn to act on them, whether they be good or bad. Now, David Goggins is just echoing James Allen. Some of you might know who James Allen is. James Allen's sort of the father, the philosophical father of the power of positive thinking. James Allen was a philosopher from the UK about 100 years ago. Let me tell you some of the things James Allen said. You may recognize some of these. As a person thinks in their heart, so they shall be. But here's the thing, James Allen never said that. But that was the foundation of everything else he said. He said, as you think, so you are, and as you continue to think, so you remain. A person is limited only by the thoughts they choose. Good thoughts and actions can never produce bad results, and bad thoughts and actions can never produce good results. In this, David Goggins, James Allen, all this idea of come on, win the day with your mind. Underneath all of that is just a simple ancient proverb. Shows up just in the middle of Proverbs. This is actually the New King James. It's the only translation that says it this way. For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Sounds very philosophical, doesn't it? I think, therefore I am. For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. And I think we all kind of believe this. We go, yeah, my thoughts compel my life. And if I want to flip the script, what am I going to do with my thoughts? And how does God play into that? I just want to tell you a fascinating story to really make my case. I don't know if you're super into the America's Cup. I'm not at all. I don't know anything about sailboats. Okay, but there's a fascinating story in the America's Cup. This guy, Commodore John Cox Stevens, they won the first America's Cup. America took it. It's a little sailboat race. If I offended you, I'm sorry. It's a big sailboat race, okay? And America won, they dominated. And Queen Victoria was like, who came in second? And these guys said, nobody came in second because we were so dominant. All anyone cares about is us. All right, so they were like early on, they were talking trash. Then they go on, they win for 132 years. He's not the skipper the whole time, okay? They win for 132 years, uncontested. Nobody can touch them. Something starts to happen in their competitors' minds. America's unbeatable. They're 132 years. Who's going to break that record? Well, Australia came along and they tried and they were unsuccessful until 1983 in some of our lifetimes. In 1983, this guy skippered a crew right here, John Bertrand, that beat the Americans. And when they were asked, how did you do it? How did you accomplish the impossible? There was a little known backstory to it. Mike Fletcher, who was part of their team, prior to the race, several years earlier, he recorded an audio of the Australian team winning, start to finish. From the start of the race, everything they did, the things they would have said to the end, when the race was over in the celebration, he gave that to the team and he said, here's the deal. Every day you listen to this audio morning and night. Every day. That means they listened to it 2,190 times. 2,190 times, a team that had never won faced a team that had never been beaten, and they visualized and believed and thought, we won, we won, we won, we won. And then they raced, and they won. They won. This, don't miss, whether you're seeking Jesus and you've got questions, or whether your faith is rich and you're following Jesus, what happens in here shapes so much of that experience. So let's talk a little bit about this. And I think it's possible that God has been preparing every one of us in our lives, wherever you are in your life. He's been preparing us for this day, for the next day, for what lies ahead. So the past is history. We want to lean into today, and we win the year by focusing on living and following Jesus today. A few thoughts then is everything in your present is preparation for something in your future. You can decide to dismiss this idea and say, no, there are some things in my present that are not preparation for things in my future. They're too hard. But I think if you look at history, people's history, they would disagree. You know, foundlings and orphans, if you look at the research of foundlings, isn't a word we use anymore, but foundlings and orphans throughout history have been some of the most significant leaders in human history because of the hardship in their present that prepared them for something in their future. So can we see this unfold in the Bible? Do we see this idea take place in anyone's life? Well, we're going to see it play out this way. If you want to change your life, you have to start by changing your story. And I want to introduce you to Jacob in 3 steps. Jacob's one of the patriarchs in the Hebrew faith, very essential in the Christian faith to understanding the story of God's redemption. And Jacob's going to show us 3 things. So flip your script, change your story, 3 steps. It's really not that easy, but just bear with me, okay? 3 steps. The first is you've got to know your name. The second is you have to fix your focus, and then you change your story. So we're going to jump right in and explore what that is. To know your name is to know who you are. Do you know who you are? If I threw that question up right now and I said, who are you? And you turn to the person next to you, and let's say you're sitting next to someone you trust and they love you. Could you look at them and say, this is who I am? Or would you start to list a bunch of external identifiers? I'm a coach. I'm a dad. I'm a man. How would you answer this question? So we're going to be introduced to Jacob's life here. And if you know the story of Jacob, there's so much in it that's fascinating. This story spans decades, and we're only going to take a couple snapshots. And in the story that spans decades, there's a lot of it that's like, whoa, what's happening in here? And in the midst of it, you find that God is on the move, working things towards an event that one day unfolds on Christmas, the birth of Jesus, who comes down through the line of Jacob. So when the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys. This is Jacob's mom. There were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. I don't want to skip over that too fast. All right, everyone in here who's had a baby or seen a baby or held a baby, how would you feel about holding a baby that was red and their whole body was a hairy garment? Right? People say there's no such thing as an ugly baby. There's one. There's definitely one. And if you were born and you were red and your whole body was a hairy garment, I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm just like stating data here. The first to come out was red and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau. Now Esau is the firstborn of twins. He's got a brother. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel. So he was named Jacob, Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to the two of them. This is the lineage of Jesus unfolding in front of us. Now, something really interesting about Jacob's name. So there's a little cue or hint for us here. He's grasping Esau's heel. It means the one who grabs the heel. Jacob, the one who comes after. Jacob, the one who follows behind. Jacob, the one who's always striving to get ahead. Jacob, the usurper. Jacob, the undercutter. Jacob, the deceiver. These are all this is Jacob's name unfolded. This is what he's born with. You are the heel grabber. You're the one who undercuts your brother. You're the deceiver. So Jacob begins his story thinking about his name, and if you got to know who you are. I'll make a case for you from the founder of modern sociology said this: I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. Now apply social media to that. Yikes. I am what you think I am? And how do I determine that? What's cluing me into that? But he was really onto something. This is generally true for human experience. We tend to shape and frame and build the story of what our life is from what other people tell us about what our life is. So before I reconciled with my dad, I went through, as a young man, a phase of what I decided was, I'm not going to be like you. Started with a school teacher. You're going to end up like your dad. I'm not going to be like you. What does that do to the relationship between a kid and their dad? Right? It was all me striving to not be like him until I discovered he's his own person. He's shaped his own ways. He was the best dad he could be, and I just needed to come to peace and live in the relationship I had with him. But I am what I think you think I am is this thing that comes into play, and we do see it in Jacob's life. Jacob lives out his life as a usurper. So here's what he does, right? Remember, his brother's Harry. Okay, his brother's a hunter. Jacob's kind of more of a politician and a statesman. So Jacob's mom, who's in on this, she says, Jacob, I got an idea. Let's dress you up in animal skins. You go on in and see Dad. He's super old now and blind. And when you go in and see him, just tell him you're Esau. He'll reach his hand out, he'll feel your hairy chest and go, oh, my firstborn son Esau. And then you say, hey, Dad, I just want one thing. I got a bowl of soup here. I'd love to give you this soup if you'll give me my inheritance. Soup was very valuable back then. So what happens is Jacob dresses up. He lives into this name, this identity. He lives into being the heel grabber. He walks on in there, puts on the fur suit, walks up. He deceives his dad, and then he runs for his life because his brother Esau is angry, and Esau's a very good hunter. So Jacob's out of there. His family system's turned upside down. He's on the run for decades. On the run. Trying to figure out what's his purpose, what's he supposed to do. So along the way, he falls in love with this woman named Rachel, and she becomes part of his family, and eventually he's going to return home. And on his way home, what he has to do is figure out what he's going to do with his brother. If you have any conflict with a sibling, this is like next level sibling conflict. The last time he saw his brother wanted him dead. And something's going to happen. Something's going to enter his thoughts. Who am I? And he's going to experience something really important, that who you are is not the same as whose you are. This isn't just wordplay. I need everybody to hear this. Who you are, it can come and go. Whose you are doesn't, depending on what you put in place of whose. Now I'm going to do something a little wordy here. I'm just going to read a list of things that the New Testament in the life of Jesus says you are. These are open to everybody who wants new life in Christ to say, yes, I think Jesus is irresistible. Count me in. I believe it's open. So let me just it's a wild list. They're not words we ever use. Here's my disclaimer. When I sit with people, no one talks about themselves this way. Everyone talks about themselves from broken records, broken soundtracks, broken playlists. No one sits down and goes, I say, hey, who are you? Oh, I'm John. By the way, I'm a child of God. Like, no one talks like that. You know what? Kanye talks like that. Before he even had an album, he was hanging out on the Chappelle show, and he got a phone call, and he picked it up, and this is what he said. He's like, yep, no, because my life is dope, and I do dope stuff. And he hung up. If Kanye talks that way, and just look at his careers, it's been up and down, but the man has stepped into believing he should leave his mark on the world. Then why do we sit down and go, yeah, I'm just a bunch of broken soundtracks. And maybe you don't. Maybe you're like, what's he talking about? Why is he so negative? You have got the secret sauce. Let's talk later. Here's the list. This is a big list. And if you're interested in it, email me, see me afterwards. I'll send you the whole list. I'm just going to read through some of the titles. You are a child of God. You are connected to Jesus. You are a friend of Jesus. You have been justified and redeemed. Those are heavy words, big words. My old self is buried with Jesus. I'm no longer a slave to sin. I am not condemned by God. I have been set free. As a child of God, I am part of God's family. I have been accepted by Christ. I am called a saint. You hear that? You are called a saint. One time, years ago, I don't remember who said it, someone was like, people need to stop thinking themselves as sinners struggling to love God, and they need to see themselves as lovers of God who struggle with sin. I thought that was it's just thinking differently. It's thinking differently. I have been called a saint. In Christ Jesus, look at these qualities. I have wisdom, righteousness, sanctification, and redemption. My body is a place where God himself can dwell. It's called the Holy Spirit. I'm joined to the Lord, and I am one in spirit with him. God leads me in triumph, victory. The hardening of my heart and the hardening of my mind have been undone. I am a new creature. I am a new creation. I have become the goodness of God in Jesus Christ. I have been made whole. I am no longer an outcast, but a child and an heir. I receive an inheritance. I have been set free. I have been blessed with every spiritual blessing. I am chosen, holy, and blameless. I have been chosen by God to obtain a blessing from him. I have been sealed. It's like a stamp. It's just a way to say like what you're going to get what we said you were going to get. I have been sealed with the Holy Spirit as my promise. Because of God's mercy and love, I have been made alive in Christ. I am seated in the heavenly places. Listen to this. I'll stop with this one. I got like 50 more. I am God's workmanship, created to produce good works. That's like saying your life is dope and you only do dope stuff. I'm God's workmanship, created in Christ. Do you think about that real quick? Like, you can probably nod your head with me and I can nod my head at you, but do you realize the seismic reality, the shift that happens in this jerk brain of ours when we stop and go, wait, you mean to tell me I am created as God's gift to the world? Like, his stamp is on me. He's excited about me. His life is in me. He wants to work through me. He's got good works he wants to do in me. And I think when we start to embrace, we stop listening to broken soundtracks and we say, you know what, I'm going to focus less on who I am and more on whose I am. Let's look what happens with Jacob when he does that very thing. He discovers that when you know who you are, you know what to do. Watch Jacob and this thing unfold. So he comes to a river, and at that river, he's intent on reconciling with his brother Esau, and he's fixed his focus. So he started with knowing his name. He's like, all right, I'm not Jay. I got to find a way out of this story people have given me, the story I've bought into. I've got to make things right again. And he fixes his focus. Watch how he does it. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. Now, you can't lose. The stream is actually the river Jabbok, Jabbok. And it's the river that had nothing left to give. That's really important. Biblical rivers and streams and bodies of water are not just there so there's a river. They're there to help tell the story. So he sent them every possession he had, everything he owned. He's built a little life for himself. Jacob, the deceiver, has deceived his way into a few things. He sent everything across the river that had nothing left to give. He sent over all his possessions. There's absolutely a wordplay going on here. And Jacob was left alone. This is really important because he's alone. He's shut out all distractions. All the white noise is gone. And then a man wrestled with him till daybreak. Now, what unfolds here we find is the man is either God himself or a representative from God. This is a spiritual moment that unfolds. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip. So his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. So Jacob's now, he's limping. The fight's over. He's got nothing left to give. He's pulled a hamstring, right? There's nothing he can do. And then Jacob replied, look at the intensity. Look at the focus of this. I will not let you go unless you bless me. I love the talk that comes out. He puts a stake in the ground and decides right there, I'm not going to believe the broken soundtrack. I am going to hang on until I get a blessing from God. I'm not going to, sure, it'd be easier maybe just to give up or say God's not real, or he doesn't want to bless me, or I don't deserve it, or Esau's going to kill me, but I'm going to hang on. I said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And the man asked him, what is your name? Jacob, the deceiver. How fun is it to say that? What's your name? I'm the liar. I'm the one who always tries to undercut. Oh, and I've done it. My wife, I totally lied to her dad. My brother, I totally stole his inheritance. On and on and on. I've just built this. My whole life has been built around this. Watch what happens with Jacob's focus. The man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. That's what the name Israel means. One who struggled with God and with people and who overcame. What a switch, right? From the undercutter to the overcomer. Because he wouldn't let go. He held on at the place where there was nothing left, and he fixed his focus. But fixing your focus is not easy because of this truth. One of the greatest mistakes you can make is to assume all your thoughts are true and to focus on them. It's easy for us. It's second nature. Assume everything coming through my head is true and to focus on it, because the reason that's so problematic is because focus determines reality. What you pour yourself into. If you think that you're not, then you won't. If you tell yourself that you can't, then you never will. Focus determines reality. I saw this in 2020 with this meme. Some of you remember the dumpster fire. This was early on. We sent this around. We're like, this is life. All right? And then we did some little editing. Yep. Welcome to 2020. There was this dumpster floating down a river. People added flames into it. And it was like, this is life. Here's the thing. So because the brain is a jerk, it has an explanatory, there's a way you and I tell ourselves, interpret, understand everything that happens to us. It's filtered through our lives and through soundtracks and through things we believe in, stories we tell ourselves. So when this unfolded, I want to say, I think I missed the opportunity of a lifetime. As the dumpster fire was raging, I should have been asking myself, what do people in this world need the most? How can I love them? How can I serve them? How can I tell them truth? How can I invite them to understand and change their explanatory style? As they feel like the world around them is burning down, how can I say, guess what? There's hope. You want to know, there's real hope. There's hope for eternity in Jesus Christ. That's what's so pivotal about the Christian message. It's not just about this life. It's that there's life beyond this life. Explanatory style gets us in trouble. So how do you fix your focus when your explanatory style is to, here's what we should know, Cleveland, University of some institution in Cleveland did some research. And they basically said this, your brain only surprises you with bad news. Think about that real quick. About 80% of the thoughts that come unasked for from your subconscious or your non-conscious, 80% of those thoughts are negative. They're dumpster fire thoughts. Why? Think about it real quick. When was the last time you were sitting somewhere and this just popped into your brain? You are brilliant and beautiful and everybody loves you. Has that ever popped into your brain? Our explanatory style is widely broken. About every 3 weeks, I think I'll share this passage from now till I die, which is going to be in a long time. Here's how you fix it. It's really formulaic. Paul's explaining to people what a life of faith, a life of following Jesus, what it does right here. Rejoice in the Lord always. I'll say it again, rejoice. This is all about thought. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. It's such a powerful line. Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything. Those are like power words, anything and everything. If you use those in a conflict, you're really making your statement. Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything. Bring your requests to God, and look what will happen. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding. It turns out the peace of God's not a jerk, just your brain is. Your brain's a jerk, but the peace of God, which transcends your brain, will guard your hearts and your mind in Christ Jesus. And it goes on. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, I want to recommend, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, if you want to memorize something in 2020 that's going to get you somewhere, memorize this right here. Whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And whatever you've learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice. And the God of peace will be with you. Practically, I just want to give you a couple things with this fix your focus. The first is make a gratitude habit. Like, just make it a habit in your life. You can journal, you can write it down. I'm being held accountable for my wife. I was working on this message a couple weeks ago, and she didn't know this, and all of a sudden this jar shows up in our house, and she's like, this is our gratitude jar. I'm like, darn it, I have to practice what I preach now. Like this, but truly, every day now, I'm just like, okay, something I'm thankful for. Something I'm thankful for. What do I have gratitude for? Make it a habit. Make it such a habit that what if by the time you died, all you were full of was gratitude? What if maybe today it just starts one thing, then two, then three, and you just build it like it's a habit. If you don't know what to be thankful for, some of you know I'm not a dog person. I don't even like my dog, and my dog is the easiest dog in the world. But I'm thankful for my dog. My dog's in the jar. Gratitude habit. Find a way to lean in and just practice. Hack your brain and the system in your faith. Begin to say, God, thank you for your scripture. Thank you for the word. Thank you for my church. Thank you for my community. Thank you that we can love and serve our neighbors. I'm thankful for these things. Make gratitude a habit. And the second thing is kind of formulaic. This is from Mark Batterson here. Change of pace and change of place equals change of perspective. Change of pace. This is for the person sitting here right now who's stuck. And maybe you don't seem stuck. Maybe you're functioning, you're high functioning. But if you're stuck, consider your pace and consider your place. And maybe if you make a change in those, you disrupt the system. You do something a little different. The plateau or the valley you're on will be unsettled. A real simple way I can think about this is our thoughts are kind of like a luge or a bobsled. I mean, once that thing hits the slope, it doesn't stop. It just goes. It doesn't slow down. It only speeds up, right? So when you're in that situation, your thoughts are gone. They're down the track. And if you can just pause and go, okay, what can I change my pace right now? Take a mental health day from work. I'm just going to take a day off and go for a hike. I mean, I've got to change my pace. I'm going to do something different today. We're going to go out to eat instead of cook dinner. I got to put it as practical as this. You're in the car and your head starts to spin. I'm going to stop driving and pull over, and I'm going to get out of the car. I'm just going to walk down into the industrial area. I'll come back. I'm just going to change a pace and change a place. We see this all over scriptures. We see this all over people with wise, healthy lives. When they see they're stuck, they look at two things that they can have some control over. What's my pace? I'm going to hack it. What's my place? I'm going to switch it. I would say, though, moving or breaking relationships doesn't fix the problems. They just show up again in the new place and in the new relationship. So keep that in mind. And so we get down to close here. Know who you are. Fix your focus brings us to change your story. This is the foundational habit for this January series. You can go after all your dreams and build habits and compound effect and go. But what you build on matters. What you build on is the most important thing. Your story, the foundation of your story, built on something greater than you, something that outlasts you, something that brings more goodness than you, building it on the hope and love of Jesus Christ, the foundation of who he is. Let's look how things unfold. We're now at the end of Jacob's life. He's got some kids. He ends up with 12 of them. They become the 12 tribes of Israel. One of these kids and the woman he loves, they've been married about 20 years. Rachel, Jacob's wife, began to give birth and had great difficulty. And as she was having great difficulty in childbirth, the midwife said to her, "Don't despair, for you're having another son." And as she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, which just means like horrible travail. Out of pain comes this child. But his father named him Benjamin. Benjamin becomes one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Rachel, who's part of Jacob's story, probably, if you look at the decades of his life, the most cherished soundtrack in his whole story is Rachel. He worked over 15, almost 20 years total to end up in relationship with her in the patriarchal system that they were in. And as she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named her son Benoni, and she dies. Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. And over her tomb, Jacob set up a pillar. And to this day, that pillar marks Rachel's tomb. Everything that happens up to this point is Jacob. But there's one thing in Jacob's life that has to be gone, one thing that has to die, one relationship that he has built his whole story around. Jacob deceived Rachel's dad. That's the only way he even got away, was deception, living into his name. Look what the next, Genesis 35, the next verse is going to say. It's the first time in all of Scripture outside of the wrestling match where the angel or the man of God or the man says, your name used to be Jacob, the deceiver. Now you're going to be the one who wrestles with man and God and overcomes. Next verse says, and Israel moved on. It's just a subtle name change. It's just a subtle switch. But remember, I don't think anything's subtle in the Bible. Anything's just there because they're filling pages. Jacob buried Rachel. Israel moved on. Jacob buried that thing that he had built, the broken playlist, the broken soundtrack, the broken story. That thing, that person, that wife, that child, that journey, that was all part of Jacob's identity that was in the past and not the one that would take him into the future. Israel was the future. Israel, now, to be fair, if you continue to read the scriptures, it bounces back and forth between Israel and Jacob, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just reminding us that God loves the broken parts of us as well. But Israel moved on. Know who you are. Fix your focus onto who you need to become, and then flip your script or change your story and lean into the story of what God is doing. I want to be really practical, and then we're going to watch a quick video, 3 questions. So here is your tool to take with you as storytellers, because we all are. The tool to fight your jerky brain is to do this. When you say something to yourself or when someone else says something to yourself, just ask yourself, is it true? Is it true? How do you know it's true? Who told you it was true? An elementary school teacher? A parent, a coach, yourself, an ex, maybe your current relationship, your parent, your kid? I mean, who told you it was true, and how does it match up to what God says about you? Because I only got halfway through a pretty insane list of how awesome you are. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it helping you? Is it helping you be a professor, be a real estate agent, be a dad, be a student, be in the drama program, be an athlete, be a coach? Is it helping? Is that story you're telling yourself helpful? And is it kind? We're going to just keep putting kindness on display. We're going to bring it back. Bringing kindness back. What? Okay. Is it kind? Is it kind? Is it kind to you? Is it kind to the people you love? And then you know it's really kind when it's kind to your enemies. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? These are important questions because there will never be anyone like you. There will never be anybody like you made in the image of God like you are. No one can have your story. And so we're going to hear the story of Morgan. Morgan was baptized a few weeks ago. Baptism is absolutely a flip the script experience. Baptism is this moment where you decide my story's changed because of Jesus and I want to announce it in front of everybody. In a few weeks, we're going to have baptisms again. And if you're like, I need to do that, well, let's talk about that. But Morgan, part of Morgan's story is battling mental health and the lies she believed about herself. And we don't get to see all of it unfold, but I want you to listen really closely to her words. And we're going to sing a song to close. It's a prayer for you. We're setting it up as a prayer. The words are simply, God, turn it around. If you're in this room and there's a single thing in your life you need to turn around, like Morgan saw turn around, then we want to invite you to embrace that song and just let it become your anthem for the morning.
Well, it's 2022, new year, new conversations, and I'm so excited to be here with you, Morgan. A couple weeks ago, you were baptized on one of our Sundays where we do baptisms, and I just wanted to sit down and for people to hear a little more of your story. So welcome. First thing, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name's Morgan Baldwin. Family's been here for a few years. My mom's volunteered. And I've been recently dedicating my life to go to church for about a year now.
Okay, and you're 18, and you graduated high school at this point. But anyone who would meet you today may not know what this journey with Jesus has been like. And it's never simple, but he's always good. Just tell us how you became a follower of Jesus.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely was not always that, oh, Christian girl. She grew up, this is her, like you said, 10th baptism. I definitely had low points. It started all the way from beginning of my life, just struggling with, mental health and just where I'm at, why I'm here. I did know God. I was introduced to him by my grandparents, my mom, and dad, but I didn't know him. It was easy to sit there and say, I'm a Christian and not really be a Christian.
Yeah.
So it was a very rocky road. I had a lot of ups and downs, knowing him, not knowing him.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
You mentioned, I guess I want to ask you a really vulnerable question. You mentioned, struggling with mental health. And I think that's something a lot of people can relate with and have questions about. Where did you find yourself and where did Jesus meet you?
So when I found myself, it was definitely a vision God sent me. I was at the point in my life where I was still in high school, but I was in online because I had to be transferred. Everyone was wondering if I would even graduate. I became an AB student she'll get there. She's just struggling all of a sudden too. She's not going to make it. What are we going to do? And it's been a bit hard. I wasn't even supposed to graduate with the path I was heading at. But Jesus does miracles, and I actually graduated early, blew everyone away. So I found him. I was on my bed doing online schoolwork. And my mom's like, hey, you should go to youth group because she volunteers. I'm like, no, I'm not. Very resentful. I didn't know Jesus at the time. I didn't even talk to him, look at him, acknowledge him. And my mom's like, come on, you could do it, you could do it. And I just passed off, but I just sat in my room. I kind of was just angry at the world for no reason. And I saw a hand come down from the sky, like in my head. And as it was happening, I felt my body lift up. And all of a sudden I had like a slight change of heart. Like, you know what? I'm at such a lost place. What is this going to do? I'll just go. And I came out smiling.
That's amazing. I think it's important people hear. It's not just like an intellectual check the boxes kind of journey. Like God, we talk about the Holy Spirit that interacts with us and meets us. And you had a vision through God used your creativity and your mind but really touched you. That was, how long ago was that?
About almost exactly a year ago.
Okay, about a year ago. And we were just talking before we started this conversation, you and I, about how you're kind of the work you're doing now and the direction you want your own career path to go. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so with my mental health and stuff, I've been in mental hospital, struggling a bit. I just essentially wanted to be heard and seen and someone to know me. And I wasn't really getting that anywhere. Therapy, I resented the idea. I still go, but I hated the idea of therapy. And all of a sudden, I had a change of heart through my mom. My mom's definitely been a great supporter. So I started going, and I started liking it. First, right off the bat, I liked my therapist, and I was like, okay, maybe mental health, it's okay to talk about it. I don't have to be so uptight about it and shut it behind these doors. I don't have to have this perfect image I was supposed to have. I can be me. And slowly kept going, but then that's when I did go to the mental hospital. And before that, I would, call and, help me, the hotlines and stuff. I would use text hotlines, and almost every time I would be almost ignored. It would turn on to them. So I was kind of helping them, and it made me feel even less seen. And that was tricky. So then when I went to the mental hospital, I still felt unseen because the nurses neglected me, kind of. She went to everyone else, and she's like, I'm sorry, Morgan. I'm sorry. You've been waiting for a few hours now. I'm sorry. This is unfair to you. But these people, they were kind of in a darker place than I was. And I said, that's okay. It's fine. It stung a bit. But then I was like, wow, I guess maybe people really are needed here. I can do something about it with my story and my background in mental health. Maybe I can make a slight change in the world.
Yeah. So your own pain and your own brokenness have become part of your story of healing and how you want your life to be used in service for others. There's so much more behind that, but I want people to hear that. Jesus, I was thinking about, people listen to these conversations. There's people right now on Sunday or online. If someone asked you, like, come on, Morgan, like, what, you talking about Jesus, why? What's one, if you could tell anybody one thing about Jesus, what would you want to say?
I would say that he sees you and he knows you. You don't have to hide from him. Hiding was so easy to do. That's one of the reasons why I didn't even become a Christian. I would avoid the word like the plague because I didn't want to be like, well, there's this dark side of me. I'm too dark. He's such a light. He's perfect. How is someone like me going to even compare to him? And the point isn't to compare. The point is just to put a little effort in and, oh, wow, he helps. Even when I neglected him, he still was there for me.
Yeah, it's so good. Like, he sees you. I want everybody to hear that. I'm so glad you know that. Like, your church loves you. We're thankful for you. You've been an inspiration to us and excited to see where your journey, where following Jesus takes you. Morgan, thank you for your vulnerability and your boldness. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.